On the morning of May 3, 1999, the sky over Oklahoma held a quiet menace. To the untrained eye, it was just another warm, humid spring day. But to the meteorologists watching the data stream in, the atmosphere was a powder keg waiting for a spark. The air was thick with moisture, flowing in from the Gulf of Mexico like a river in the sky. The sun beat down, heating the ground and creating a vast reservoir of unstable, explosive energy. Forecasters use a term for this energy: CAPE, or convective available potential energy. On a typical stormy day, CAPE values might reach 2,500. On this day, they were soaring past 5,000. But energy alone isn't enough. A storm needs a trigger. That trigger came in the form of a dry line, a sharp boundary between the moist Gulf air and the dry desert air from the west. This boundary acted like a plow, forcing the unstable air violently upward. High above, a powerful jet stream roared, its winds providing the final, crucial ingredient: extreme wind shear. This is the difference in wind speed and direction at different altitudes, and on this day, it was exceptionally strong. It would act like a giant, invisible hand, grabbing the rising columns of air and twisting them into the tight, rotating updrafts that give birth to the deadliest storms on the planet: supercells. The atmosphere over Oklahoma wasn't just primed for storms. It was a loaded gun, and every meteorologist in the country could see it. They knew a historic outbreak was not just possible, but likely. The only questions were where, and how bad it would truly be. The trigger was pulled in the mid-afternoon. Southwest of the city of Lawton, the immense energy in the atmosphere could no longer be contained. A thunderstorm erupted, exploding vertically into the sky with astonishing speed. This was not just any storm. It quickly organized itself, developing the powerful, persistent rotation that is the hallmark of a supercell. On radar screens, meteorologists watched with growing alarm as it took on a classic, terrifying hook shape. They designated it Supercell A. For nearly 2 hours, this parent storm churned across the rural landscape, a majestic and terrifying spectacle. It was a monster in its maturation phase, methodically gathering strength. Then, at 4:47 p.m., near the town of Chickasha, it happened. A funnel cloud descended from the rotating base of the storm and made contact with the earth. The Bridge Creek Moore tornado was born. Initially, it was small, but it was fed by the immense power of its parent supercell. As it moved northeast, it began to grow at an alarming rate, its color darkening as it ingested the rich soil of the Oklahoma plains. Scientists and storm chasers in the field watched in awe and horror. On their radar screens, they could see the tornado's signature becoming clearer, more defined, and displaying signs of extreme internal rotation. Its path was steady, its power was increasing, and its trajectory was taking it directly toward the sprawling, densely populated southern suburbs of Oklahoma City. Bridge Creek was first. Then Moore. A supercell had given birth to a beast, and it was heading straight for home. As the tornado carved its path of destruction, a team of scientists in a heavily modified truck raced to get ahead of it. This was the Doppler on Wheels team, or DOW, a mobile research unit armed with a sophisticated radar dish. Their mission: to get as close as safely possible and scan the internal workings of the tornado, to measure what had never been measured before. As the tornado, now a massive wedge of violent darkness, churned towards the outskirts of Bridge Creek, the DOW team found their position. They aimed their radar dish into the heart of the vortex. The data that flashed onto their screens was, for a moment, unbelievable. It showed wind speeds of 301 miles per hour, plus or minus 20. That's 484 kilometers per hour. A stunned silence fell over the crew. They had just recorded the fastest wind speed ever measured on the surface of the Earth. The Fujita scale, the standard for rating tornadoes at the time, classified an EF5 as having winds above 261 miles per hour. This tornado didn't just meet that criteria, it shattered it. The winds inside that funnel were moving at speeds comparable to a jetliner at takeoff. This single measurement was a monumental moment in science. It provided the first hard, instrumental proof of the theoretical power hidden within these storms. It was a number that confirmed the worst fears of forecasters and explained the almost unbelievable destruction these tornadoes could cause. The scientists had looked into the eye of the beast and captured its very essence in a single, terrifying number. And that beast, the most powerful wind ever recorded, was now descending upon thousands of people. After obliterating much of Bridge Creek, the tornado, a mile-wide monster, crossed into the city limits of Moore, a bustling suburb home to thousands. Here, the abstract horror of scientific data became a visceral, human catastrophe. The sound was the first warning for many, a deafening roar often compared to a freight train, but a sound so all-encompassing it seemed to come from everywhere at once. In a matter of minutes, entire neighborhoods were subjected to a level of violence that defies description. This was beyond roofs being torn off. Houses disintegrated. The force of the wind was so extreme that homes were not just destroyed, but completely scoured from their concrete foundations, leaving nothing but a bare slab. Vehicles were tossed through the air like toys, some found wrapped around trees hundreds of yards from where they started. The tornado's debris cloud, filled with splintered wood, metal, and glass, sandblasted everything in its path. At the National Weather Service office, forecasters watched the radar in horror. They saw the debris ball signature, a clear sign of catastrophic damage, heading directly for the most populated parts of the metro area. They knew their standard warnings were not enough. In a historic, desperate move, they issued a new kind of alert, the first-ever tornado emergency. The language was stark and terrifying. Tornado damage is not survivable. If you are in its path, you will not survive without underground shelter. This is a life-threatening situation. It was a plea, an attempt to shock people into action, to convey that this was not just another storm. This was an extinction-level event for everything in its path. The tornado was on the ground for 85 minutes, carving a 38-mile path of destruction. When it finally dissipated, an eerie silence fell over Moore, broken only by the sound of dripping water and distant sirens. Survivors emerged from the rubble into a world that was unrecognizable. The landscape was a monochromatic nightmare of gray and brown, a wasteland of debris stretching to the horizon. Where streets and houses once stood, there was only a chaotic jumble of splintered wood, twisted metal, and personal belongings scattered for miles. The search and rescue operation began immediately, a frantic and heartbreaking effort. First responders, many of whom had lost their own homes, navigated through streets that no longer existed, guided only by memory. They dug through piles of rubble with their bare hands, searching for signs of life. The human cost was immense. 36 people lost their lives in the storm's path. Nearly 600 were injured. The financial cost soared past $1 billion, making it the first tornado in history to cross that threshold of damage. The stories that emerged in the hours and days that followed were of both unimaginable loss and incredible survival. It was a long, dark night for Oklahoma, a night spent counting the cost of coming face to face with the planet's most powerful storm. The legacy of the May 3, 1999, tornado is as immense as its power. While it was rated F5 on the original Fujita scale, its recorded wind speeds make it the benchmark against which all violent tornadoes are measured. It is, in essence, the Everest of tornadoes, a definitive example of nature's maximum intensity. But its most important legacy is not in the records it broke, but in the changes it forced. The storm became a catalyst for a revolution in public safety and science. In Oklahoma, a shelter-in-every-garage mentality took hold, and building codes were strengthened. The tornado emergency alert, born of desperation that night, is now a standard, life-saving tool used by the National Weather Service for the most extreme events. Scientists pored over the data from the Dow, leading to breakthroughs in understanding tornado genesis and improving radar detection algorithms. This knowledge, forged in tragedy, had its most profound test 14 years later. In 2013, another violent EF5 tornado struck Moore, following a terrifyingly similar path. The destruction was once again catastrophic. But this time, the death toll was significantly lower. The difference was the legacy of 1999. The warnings were issued earlier and with more confidence. More people had access to storm shelters. The public was more aware and better prepared. The lessons learned from the deadliest wind on Earth had armed a new generation to survive its echo. The 1999 storm was a story of immense destruction, but its final chapter is one of survival, a testament to how even the most horrific tragedy can provide the knowledge needed to save lives in the future. On May 3, 1999, a supercell thunderstorm over Oklahoma produced a force of nature that would redefine our understanding of weather. The Bridge Creekmore EF5 tornado was not just a storm. It was the site of the fastest wind speed ever recorded on planet Earth, a stunning 301 miles per hour, 484 kilometers per hour. This documentary tells the complete story of that historic and terrifying day. We explore the rare atmospheric conditions that created a loaded gun sky, follow the scientists who chased the beast and captured the record-breaking measurement, and witness the catastrophic impact on the communities of Bridge Creek and more. Through archival footage and expert analysis, we uncover not only the tragedy but also the profound legacy of the 1999 monster. Learn how this single event sparked a revolution in tornado forecasting, public warnings, and storm safety that continues to save lives today. This is the story of the day science came face to face with the most powerful wind ever seen. Throughout our journey, we have delved into some of the most dramatic and impactful events of recent history, transforming the raw facts of these occurrences, the fury of a storm, the cold precision of a military operation, into a narration that both captivates and respects the gravity of the subject is an exercise in balance and purpose. The ultimate goal transcends a simple listing of events. It is about creating an experience that resonates with the audience on a profound level, converting historical data into a felt memory. This process rests on essential foundations that are worth highlighting. The architecture of the narrative is perhaps the most critical pillar. By dividing a complex and sometimes chaotic story into distinct chapters, we create a logical and emotional progression for the viewer. Each segment functions as a piece of a puzzle, allowing the audience to first absorb the scientific or strategic context, then the intensity of the climax, and finally, the reflection on the legacy. This methodical construction is not just an organizational tool. It is a way to manage tension and empathy. We guide the viewer step by step, building the story's foundation brick by brick, ensuring that the event's emotional weight is delivered with maximum effectiveness, not by overwhelming with information, but by gradually immersing them in the magnitude of what occurred. Equally crucial is the constant fusion of the macro and the micro. A number like a wind speed of 301 miles per hour is an impressive but abstract statistic. It only acquires its true, terrifying meaning when juxtaposed with the image of a house being scoured from its foundation, or the story of a mother shielding her child in a closet. In the same way, the $120 million value of a warship becomes viscerally understood when we witness its destruction through the thermal lens of a small, unmanned drone. It is in this dance between the monumental scale of the event and the intimate focus on the human experience that the story gains its soul. Connecting the scientific data to the human consequence, the statistic to the scar, is what transforms a documentary into a testimony. Finally, the adopted tone is the alloy that binds all these elements together. A journalistic, serious, and respectful approach lends credibility and honors the memory of those affected. However, it is imbued with a cadence and gravity that resemble that of an expert storyteller, capable of modulating the intensity of the delivery to match the flow of the story. The careful choice of words, the use of powerful metaphors, like the blank canvas or the ghostly pack, and the sentence structure are all deliberate tools to evoke emotion without resorting to sensationalism. Ultimately, the work we undertake is an act of translation, translating the chaos of reality into a cohesive narrative, the complexity of facts into an emotionally accessible truth. The final text we produce is not just a record. It is an invitation to reflect, a curated experience designed so that the viewer not only knows what happened, but feels, for a moment, the weight of that instant in history.